The election 2 days ago was critical. What is your overall reaction to the results?
Yeah, well, I have a very positive feeling on the process of the election. First, the level of participation, it was around 63%. It's one of the highest in the history of the Mexican democracy. And I'm also very happy of how Mexico has built an electoral system which first seed, the first step to build it, it was a profound lack of trust on the political actors. So in order to build this trust, not just between the political actors, but between the electoral system itself and the Mexican citizenship, we have built upon different layers of learning of each of the elections. We learned a lot from the election of 2000, we learned a lot from election 2006, and this build-up of the institutional design has made, I think, a very strong system that the Mexican democracy should feel proud of. About the outcome, this is like the process of how the election was prepared. Well, the outcome, I think, for me, leaves an enormous doubt. And the big doubt is who won. Obviously, Enrique Peña Nieto won. He's the candidate that won. But I think we still have to find out which is the PRI that it's come back to power. Is it the PRI that squandered resources in the state of Coahuila? Is it the PRI which has presumably strong links with organized crime in the state of Tamaulipas? Is it the PRI that has also problems with organized crime and corruption in Veracruz? We still don't know which is the PRI that it's coming back, or it's the PRI of Ernesto Cedillo who made a big push to build institutions to transform Mexico through the autonomy of the Supreme Court, the autonomy of the bank, the national bank, the creation of the Federal Institute of Elections. There's still an enormous doubt of who are going to be the group of people that are going to govern with Enrique Peña Nieto. The result of his election, it's the basis of the support of these governors, which are like a very diverse kind of politicians. Some of them very backward kind of looking, more a 21st century version of Gonzalo N. Santos, a famous cacique of the Mexican Revolution, and other governors which are more focused in creating job opportunities, economic development in his states. So I'm still puzzled and I'm wondering which is the PRI that won the election 2 days ago, and we will find out. I think the first signaling of this would be the choice of people for the president's cabinet to see if the Mexican analysts and observers which are worried of a restoration of the former PRI of the 20th century, they have evidence to worry, or we should trust the word of the winner of the election, Mr. Peña Nieto, who has insisted in several instances that his success at the polls does not represent a trip to the past for the whole political system in Mexico.
Now, in a way, Peña Nieto so strongly emphasized the transparency and accountability of the new PRI coming into office. Even were he to want to do that, given the correlation of forces you just mentioned, could he? What would be the resistance within the PRI to any meaningful change along these lines?
I think one of the biggest challenges of Mexico in the future, even more than the crisis of organized crime, is the relation between the federal government and the states, the distribution of responsibilities, in realms of public policy, like taxing, for example, public security, another one, accountability of public resources. Once I heard a governor from the PRI to say that they never had it so easy with presidents from the PAN, because they didn't have this stronghold in local powers, they didn't mess up too much into state politics. So I think that the big challenge is gonna see how this new president rebuilds his relations with PRI state governors under the context and the framework of a democracy. I don't know if that more or less answered the question, Harley.
Yes, it does. But one final question. What is the most immediate challenge that you feel the president-elect needs to address when he enters office in December?
Well, I think one of the key reasons that several million Mexicans voted for the PRI is that they presented themselves as an answer to an inefficient government from the PAN. We have to consider that the PRI governed a very different country that was also called Mexico, but it was a country from the 20th century with very different kind of institutional framework. So the first challenge for me is to see how the PRI will present itself, will manage, will coexist with this new institutional framework, which in a way, they govern Mexico for 70 years, but they are very unexperienced in governing on a context of a plural democracy. From these 70 years, they just governed 3 years, the last 3 years of President Ernesto Zedillo, under a context of a strong, dynamic, vibrant democracy. So the first challenge is how the dinosaur, which is the metaphor we use for the PRI, will coexist with these democratic institutions, with these new checks and balances, with the demands of transparency, with demands of accountability that were non-existent on the time that the PRI governed. That would be the first challenge. The second challenge is that they presented themselves that they could achieve what the PAN didn't. So it will be very interesting to find out if the PAN could not achieve the things, important reforms in Congress like energy reform or tax reform, because lack of political ability of the PAN government, or just because the country changed itself. We should remind that the PRI was very bad as an opposition party. They constantly, systematically sabotage several initiatives from the PAN. So now it will be interesting to see, with the burden and responsibility of government, how they will behave, trying to push forward ideas and projects in Congress that they blocked in the last 12 years, and in the other way, to see if the PAN is better as an opposition than it was as it was in government, to see if they could work together in order to advance these initiatives. And also it will be interesting to see how the PRD and the Mexican left reacts in this context of change. Well, I think one interesting message from the election on Sunday is the success of the left. Besides the position of Andrés Manuel López Obrador of contesting the results in the tribunals, which I think it's a very welcome initiative considering what happened in 2006, to use the institutional challenge to present its critiques and evidence that he doesn't agree with the results of the election. I think the will of the Mexican people in several parts of the country to look for a modern left. New mayor in Mexico City, Mancera, he got several 100,000 votes more than López Obrador itself in the Distrito Federal. So it's like the Mexican people is willing to accept governments from the left in Mexico City, in the state of Morelos, in the state of Tabasco. They had huge voting in the north that they didn't have before. Maybe with other with a different serene. Mexico is looking forward for a potential and strong left, which will have a voice in Congress, and it's also an interesting player to consider.